the second day of the State Expo. We're happy to start our second day with none other than Dalia el Sadany, Design Ambassador and Member of Parliament. I'm personally very happy to be introducing her. She's a personal friend and a very dear person to my heart, and she's a great achiever. She's done amazing things here in Egypt. And today, Dalia will be discussing architectural identity and the future of projects in Egypt, which we believe is a major and a massively important topic. So, Dalia, happy to have you with us.
Hi, everyone. Morning. It's an honor to be with you guys. You're a very promising and very hardworking team, regardless that you're one of my close friends. But it's an honor to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, and I will leave the stage for you now.
All right. We're looking at the presentation, please. You were still waiting for the presentation?
It's on. It should appear. It just takes a few seconds to appear.
All right.
Did it?
All right. No, it hasn't shown yet, but let me start with an intro.
We can begin with the intro until it appears
sure.
with you.
Okay, so basically, what we're going through in Egypt now is a huge opportunities in new projects. There's a lot of new cities. There is a lot of intention in the mainstream of the government to start expanding. And you'll see in the presentation when we start that our major concern and my major concern for a lot of years that we were all cramped up in a very small area of Egypt. And Egypt is a huge country with a lot of potential, but the issue is that we have a very long heritage of being in 8% of that area. So the major topic here is how can we expand? How can we have new architecture with respect to our heritage, with respect to Egypt's rich heritage in architecture? So we're still waiting for the presentation to pop in so we can start talking about that. Guys, could you please check if we can see the presentation, please?
Dalia, it's actually on, so if you want to proceed and say next, and our team will
I can't
press next
see
for you.
This is the problem. I can't see it. So.
Okay. Can you check up in the screen? There's a bullet that says slides. I sent you a screenshot of it. If you could just check that.
Okay. There we go. All right. Now it popped up. Okay. So back to the topic. So now, as I said, there is a huge intention in the government to do some expansions, lots of expansions, and of course, there are several items affecting this expansion. If we have new projects of architectural projects, there is the part where I always say building materials. We have a tendency here in the past few years to work with concrete and glass and to do towers. And the problem is, I honestly believe that in Egypt, we have to think differently. We have to start considering working and expanding horizontally. This is what I mean. You've got the map here, and we live on 8% of that area, which is a huge loss. The cities that are considered, let's say, for example, we have Cairo, which is around 3,000 kilometers squared, and we have population. This is the documented population of 9.8, but the reality is way more than that, of course. There is a lot of areas that are not properly calculated, and the data is still being gathered. But then we have other governorates that are huge and massive in area, and the population is very low. So there is a very disproportional distribution of the population, and that's why the intention of the government lately to actually expand in new cities is a proper thing. And in order to avoid all the problems that we're facing in our condensed cities, we should have that expansion. Now, concerning the expansion, I personally am an advocate of having an identity. And the problem with Egypt, and this has always been discussed in several conferences all over the world, is what is the architectural identity of Egypt? And even though it's a privilege to be Egyptian and to be living in this country of which is full of all the design styles. We've been through everything. Everything is in Egypt. The problem is to find something in common to create this identity. And that's why I've always suggested that the best way to tackle this is to consider Egypt like different areas with different identities, different cities, different cultures. You visit Cairo, and it's a huge city that you can divide it into different areas. For example, like Masr Jadida is very different than Maadi is very different than downtown. So the actual concept was, why don't we look at our heritage? Like, for example, we have the Pharaonic period with the distinct design features of it. We have the Islamic period, which is basically a huge era of different styles. It's not only one style, there are huge different styles in the Islamic period. We have the modern era. As you can see, I've given examples like downtown in Cairo. We have also different styles there. And we have areas that I really respect and should be taken into consideration when you are expanding. For example, you have Port Said. Port Said is a distinct city. And if we're doing new cities that are very close to the channel, which we are now, then we should respect this architecture. My problem is that we don't need to imitate um, modern cities with huge glass towers. We have the land, we have the history, and we have the elements that could support us. And my concern is we have cities that have respected their architecture, for example, like Italy, and this is where they get the tourism from. And we're talking about Egypt that has started everything. I always say that Egypt existed and then history. So we have all these eras, we have all these beautiful characters in design. Look at the Nubian architecture, it's very distinct. You've got the Sinai architecture, it's very characteristic, it's different. You have all the possibilities and you have all the elements for you to expand in a very distinctive way. My concern is that if we actually start considering doing towers and glass towers, that has no art, that's a very global sort of concept, and it has no identity. Like, for example, you can see certain areas in London or in New York, and you wouldn't differentiate between them. And that's my concern. I wouldn't love to see Egypt full of glass towers like Dubai or New York. I think we have more heritage and more respect of our history, and we have all the potential in order to stand out. So actually, in the new capital, there is an intention. There is a huge intention to have an architectural identity. And if anyone goes and visits there, they will find areas where they have duplicated downtown Cairo, which has the distinct cultural design of Renaissance. And you'll find that there are areas. So the horizontal expansion, I think, from my point of view, having 4 or 5 floors is the proper thing. And going back to the first slides that we talked about is the building materials. We have a problem in Egypt with energy. The world has a problem in energy. So if we actually maintain to the 4 or 5 floors then we will not be using glass towers and eventually will not be, consuming a lot of energy in ventilating them. So there is in our culture means of treating the environmental aspects with the design. Like everybody knows that, as I said in the previous slides, you could see they have the vaults, they have the air traps. All of these are means to regulate and ventilate the area, the architectural space, without the need of wasting a lot of energy for it. So that's why I'm pro the horizontal expansion as opposed to the vertical one. And as for the building materials, you can see in distinct areas with unique architecture like that, you use the local materials. You don't need to import. And that's also a factor that would affect in our economy. So in so many words, the horizontal expansion in a country like Egypt with that vast area would save up a lot of money and would actually affect our economy. So in my summary, I just put it down in bullet points. We have an identity, we have the history, we have all the design aspects, we have the land, we have the manpower. So the whole thing is having the intention and having the vision of doing what I call macro planning, is looking at the map and start designing it from the beginning. And this is, I think, what's happening now, because as everybody knows throughout the media and through the news, that there is a huge intention in renovating historical Cairo. And I was honored to be part of the expert team with the Prime Minister considering this project. And there is also a huge investment in the whole old hotels of Egypt. These are iconic buildings. These are buildings that could bring millions just by visiting them on the touristic side, whether internationally or locally. So the intention is expand horizontally, start initiating and start having new cities with the vision, our architectural identity, and go back, innovating that and cleaning it of all the as I call it, it's like dirt. You have a little bit of dust on the old city. So clearing that and preserving the heritage with the proper means. And what I mean the proper means is that you can reuse these old buildings, but preserving its architectural identity. The local building materials, as I said, is a huge factor. We actually don't have to turn into doing glass towers. That's where the money comes from. The money is spent on doing this massive concrete blocks where we don't need that. We have a lot of land and we can expand using our own building materials. And here in this slide, I'm basically creating a pro plan for using local building materials and for the usability of and the success example of expanding horizontally is that we will encourage the Egyptian industry. We will encourage the local workers, the local. There are lots of areas in Egypt where they actually do the mud blocks, and this is 100%. If you're considering environmental uses, then you have less waste, you have less waste of energy, less cost of energy. And we're talking about a green environment because you're using local materials from the local surroundings. This is an example of what I respect as a respect of identity, which is a mosque that I actually was honored to be in one of the teams that worked on the design and inspected the final project of the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi. And the fact that it was done in a combination of minimalistic, which is basically you're doing less ornaments, yet it has its architectural identity. And I consider that a huge success because you don't have to copy when you're doing new buildings. It doesn't have to be a duplicate. You don't have to copy all the ornaments and all the artworks that were there and all the the, uh, the little meticulous details, yet you can actually preserve that identity. And I would take this as an opportunity to actually stand by one of the causes that I have spent my life trying to discuss and to highlight is craftsmanship. We have brilliant craftsmen in Egypt, and this is a demolishing. Basically, it's turning extinct, which is the handworking, the woodworks, even the marble carvings. All of this used to be done by hand in the Egyptian history of architecture, and yet this is demolishing now in front of all the so-called futuristic, mechanical means of doing building materials. And I totally disagree with that. I think holding on to these craftsmen who are more of artisans than just craftsmen is our means to stand out and to preserve our identity. And that's basically it. Thank you.